A few weeks ago, I did a video on this A1 Bambu 3D printer. It does have the AMS unit on it, and I was talking about some of the things that I print with my 3D printers, and I got some emails asking just how difficult it is to set up one of these printers. I've always had two 3D printers set up, and that's because I print a lot of parts, and having two means I can print twice as many parts at any one given time. However, after owning the A1 right here, I have decided that my Ender 3, it's probably time to retire and upgrade it to an A1 as well, so we'll do an unboxing of that A1 and show you how quick and easy it is to get started in 3D printing. I was in Micro Center last night and they had a relatively good deal on these Bambu Lab A1s. This particular box does not come with the AMS. The AMS allows you to switch colors on the fly, and since I already had an AMS unit, I decided to buy one without because I don't always print a lot of different colors. I usually print a lot of solid colors. Now inside the box, the first thing you're presented with is the build plate. This is the metal plate that sits on top that all of your parts are printed on. Underneath the build plate, you're going to find a few parts and pieces. There is a spool holder that goes on top of the unit to hold those spools of printable filaments. There are a handful of parts and pieces, a filament sample kit, and a tune-up kit with some tools and parts and pieces. Once we pull that out of the way, you're going to find the printer itself buried underneath all of these foam pieces. And the printer is mostly assembled, but you do have to put a few pieces together. It's not really difficult at all. As you can see, the two main pieces are the base of the printer, and this is the tower. I'm sure there's a technical name for it. This is the top part of the printer that all of the motor and print heads glide and move on. And also located underneath all that was some filament. That way you can test your printer out if you haven't bought a filament yet. And there is a filament guide tube also included. We'll talk about that in a second. So the first thing that we need to do is cut off all the zip ties and parts and pieces that's holding everything stable. There are a lot of moving parts in the top part of this printer, and the manufacturer zip ties everything so that it doesn't move around during shipping. Next, we want to unpackage the toolkit or the maintenance kit. Basically has all the tools you need to service and maintain this printer. And looking at the bottom of the base of the printer, there are 4 screws that are highlighted in red. You need to remove those 4 screws. They are for shipping. They keep this plate still so it doesn't slide around. And at this point, the build plate should move. And it does. And now we just need to put the base into place just like this. And now it's ready to screw together. Underneath this build plate holder is an access plate. And underneath this access plate is the location of where you need to put the screws together to hold the base to the top of the printer. You need to remove this access cover. Just grab a hold of the back, lift up on the cover and slide it out of the way. It's going to sound a little bit crunchy, and that's okay. You're not going to break anything. Bambu has made this extremely easy to assemble. They give you a pack of screws in a package that is labeled. The label says for base housing. And if you look at the base, there is a green circle around every screw hole that needs one of these particular screws. And again, Bambu provides the tools needed to tighten those screws. When you get done installing all of the screws back here, you're going to slide the build plate holder straight back, and there are going to be more located in the front of the printer that you're going to have to put in as well. Once all of those screws are in, you're ready to put this cover back in place. And now you're going to gently lay the printer on the front or its back, and you need to put all the plugs in place. And again, Bambu's made this very simple. Basically, you put the big plug in like this, and you slide it straight down. And then there's a screw that you need to tighten. Again, they provide the tools to do that. Once you tighten that screw, you have a couple of plugs to plug in. And then there is a plug up here that you chase underneath a little cover. You snap the cover down and plug it into its appropriate place. Everything is color coded, so the orange obviously goes into the orange spot, the green goes into the green spot, and the unmarked or the white goes into the white spot. Not a big deal there. And when you're done, everything should look like that. Now from this point, you're almost done. You have to install one more part. This is called the wiper. The wiper goes all the way to the left side of the printer, and it just kind of slips in place like this. They also give you a screw to hold it in place, also in a marked bag. And all you have to do is put the screw in place, and the wiper is complete. It's installed at that point. And because this does not come with the AMS unit, you will be using this spool mount or the spool holder. Its assembly is pretty easy. You just screw the 2 pieces together, and then you're going to install it on this top rail. It just kind of rocks in place, and then the back clips it and locks it, and it's ready to use. We talked about this tube earlier on, and we need to install it as well. It's very simple. Just poke it down into one of the 4 holes on the printer head, shove it straight down. It will lock in place. Take the other end, and you're going to connect it up here to the spool holder. It has this little guide on the end that swivels. You take the other end of that tube, you shove it straight into that little swivelly piece, it locks in place and you're done. The last thing you're going to want to do is install the build plate. It is just magnetically attached because when you print, you remove this plate to release your stuff sometimes. And you can also buy different textures of build plates and different things. And sometimes these just wear out. So it is a removable item and it is magnetically held in place. And located on the side right here is the screen to operate the printer. You just want to swivel it just like that. And now your printer is ready to use. Now we need to set up the software and the printer will kind of configure itself. It'll calibrate itself and set everything else up for you. The printer for the most part is ready to use. And one final thing that I almost forgot to mention is Chord Management. They gave you this little disc inside that maintenance kit, and this disc is designed to just kind of plug into the cord that's leading to the print head. And then the other end you want to snap to the tube that is leading to the spooler. So that keeps the cord up and out of the way. And one thing worth mentioning is right here on the corner of this device right here is a camera, and this camera allows you to watch what's printing from your phone. It is very handy because you can kind of keep a status to see how far things are printed, or if you have a problem, you can take a look. But on the other printer, when I first bought it, well, I couldn't see a darn thing through the lens. And then I realized that there's a little cover here, and out of the box, this cover is blocking your view. It's a privacy cover in case you don't want to be seen by the camera. And another quick tip is you're going to want to use a table that doesn't have a lot of movement, something that's pretty stout, because there is a lot of movement, a lot of quick movements in these printers, and it causes the table to rock and move. That might not sound like a big deal, but it will affect print quality as you start getting more height, because some of this stuff, although it is very solid, may move just a little bit, and as everything's shaking around, your print quality may suffer the higher you print. All of that being said, I am printing on something that is pretty wobbly, and my prints are coming out great, but I'm not printing anything that is too tall, and I do plan on replacing this workbench eventually. When you buy filaments, they normally come in a 1 kilogram roll, like what you're looking at here. This printer natively prints with a 1.75 millimeter diameter filament, which is pretty common across the industry right now. I buy most of my filaments through Micro Center. They sell an Inland brand, and it seems to print fine for what I do. And you're going to notice that when you get this, it is in a vacuum sealed bag, and that is because filament over time will soak up moisture and start to print funny. So you want to keep your filament when you're not using it in a bag at all times. If you're lucky, sometimes your filaments will come in a Ziploc bag. You just cut the top off and you can keep reusing the bag. For those filaments that don't come with a bag, I just use Ziploc baggies. And another quick tip is the filament itself comes on these rolls, and you really don't want to leave these lay loose, these ends. You want to tie them off inside maybe a hole of the roll. They come with these little holes, that way you can kind of poke them in and poke them out. That just keeps it from getting tangled, because if you were to let go of this and it were to unwind a little bit, then some of this could get tangled up, kind of like it's getting now. And sometimes it gets caught up in the printer and it doesn't unspool properly. But as long as you're poking the end through the holes like this, even some slip-ups like this will typically be just fine. As far as loading a filament, it's pretty easy with these Bambus. You just hang it onto the filament spool holder like this, and you take the tail end of the filament, you feed it down through the tube like this. The tube is fairly clear, so you can see yourself feed it all the way to the print head. When you get to the print head, it's going to stop. You'll feel a little bit of resistance. We're going to go ahead and tell the printer that we need to do something with the filament. And we are going to load the filament. It is going to tell us the filament type is unknown. We want to go ahead and edit those filaments. And we are using a generic PLA. And we can go ahead and tell it what color it is. This is a dual color, so we'll probably just pick something that's close. It's kind of like a beigeish brown. In dynamic pressure control, we're just going to leave it default. And we tell it OK. And now that it's telling us that an action is required, please observe the nozzle of the filament has been extruded. Tap Done. So we're looking for the filament to come out of the printer head, and every time we hit retry, it's going to try to push a little bit of filament out. And eventually when you see some filament come out, we're going to tell the printer, yes, we do see some filament. And I didn't catch it on camera, but it ejected this little pile of filament, which this would be purging what was inside that print head. So now that the printer is loaded with filament, it is ready to use. And we can either send a print job from our phone, or we can send a print job from the computer. Or we can use the screen and find a print job that's already on this SD card that was sent with the printer. And in our case, there's quite a few things in here, but what we're going to print is what's called a 3D Benchy. And for those who do not know, the 3D Benchy is basically a test print that guarantees your printer is set up correctly. And albeit this little boat doesn't look very complicated, there's a lot of overhangs and a lot of things that pretty much give you an idea of how good your printer is printing. So let's go ahead and print that. And we'll tell it, go ahead and print. And at this moment, the printer is going to do a few things. It is going to auto level the bed. It's going to sing that little song as well. And then it's going to start printing. It'll do all this on its own. You don't have to do anything. In fact, it's pretty much carefree. You walk away and come back and your print job will be done. And when it's done, it's going to give you a little bit of information. It tells us that it took 21 minutes. Now, keep in mind that 21 minutes is heating the bed, it's calibrating, it's leveling that bed. It's also heating the extruder, nozzle, etc. And it took 10 grams of filament to print this particular piece. And as the bed cools, right now it's relatively cool, it'll release from the bed. So it's cool enough I can probably just kind of break it off like that. And the quality is pretty good for this particular print. So there you kind of have a quick crash course on how these 3D printers work. You have a quick crash course on the Bambu Lab A1, how to set it up and how to get started. And in my humble opinion, I think the A1 is a great platform to learn on. If you want to print multiple colors and switch those colors out on the fly, the AMS unit is a great option to have. It does cost a little bit more, but to be frank, most of my prints are just monocolor, which is why the second printer doesn't have the AMS option. Hopefully this video is a little bit insightful. It shows you how this works and introduces you to the world of 3D printing. If you like these types of videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Take a look at some of my other videos. At the very least, you might be entertained.